Namaste. Today we're talking about retrograde, and people freak out about retrograde, and the culture encourages us to freak out about retrograde, and it's not like it's nothing. But on the other hand, Mercury goes retrograde 3 or 4 times a year. So we're not going to just stop living because Mercury is retrograde. Rahu and Ketu, the nodes of the moon or the eclipse points of the moon, are retrograde all the time. We are constantly working with situations that are retrograde within our psyche, our mind, our feelings, however you would like to think about that. But it is true that right now we are having a lot of retrograde, or will have a lot of retrograde very soon. So it's a good time to look at what retrograde is, the gift that it is, not just the difficulty, and to look at some of the specifics of each planet that is retrograde now or will be soon. So, what's retrograde? Planets don't really move backwards, but because of the relative size and distance of our orbits, from our vantage point here on planet Earth, sometimes planets appear to be moving slower than we expect them to move. And when we have that circumstance, it looks like they're moving backwards. And that's retrograde. What does retrograde do? It means that the matters that are ruled by each planet, we're confused about them. We need more time with them. It's sort of like you're driving down the road and now you notice, it's getting foggy. I don't see as clearly as I usually do. All right? So what's retrograde now? Jupiter has been retrograde since the beginning of February. Jupiter is our belief systems, our religion, if you have one. And some people say, I don't have a belief system, but maybe that's a belief system. Jupiter is also the optimism that we experience, the inspiration that we feel, the expansiveness and hopefulness that we have, our relationships to our teachers and to teaching. So with all these matters, since the beginning of February and into June, we may need to take more time. We may need to consider more. We may need to figure things out for ourselves with regard to our belief systems, which is a great opportunity, okay? Many of us very wonderfully rely on some really wonderful teachers, and that's great. But the best thing your teacher would tell you this too, my teacher tells me this, that the best thing a student can do is to someday know more and go higher than the teacher, and that would make the teacher very most happy. So here's a time when you could work on your own understanding that can't be taken away from you, that you can't say, I didn't understand what my teacher said, or I didn't understand what I wrote in the book, or what I read in the book. Now I have taken the time to really experience and figure it out, and now I have this as a gift, this gained wisdom, and it can't be taken away whether or not Jupiter is retrograde. Saturn's retrograde. It just went retrograde on April 6th. And I wrote a blog about that at Rayanne Banker, Vedic Astrologer, on Facebook. And you don't have to be on Facebook in order to read it. It's a public page, so you can look for that if you'd like to see things written down. But very short list. Saturn rules the challenges of time, the weight of time, how time feels to us, hard work, pressure, difficulties. Saturn rules right action, humility, keeping on with what needs to be done, no matter what comes. And Saturn also brings karma during the retrograde cycle. If you've taken time to figure things out about the matters of Saturn and you're still experiencing a lot of confusion, it may be that there's something that you need to look at, some way that you have not been living in regards to your own values. Perhaps you've wronged someone and you need to take accountability or make amends if you can. Perhaps you haven't been spending enough time alone and in practice, and you just need to do that some more for a while. So these are the matters of Saturn. Mercury will be retrograde on April 9th, and only for 3 weeks. Mercury's retrograde 3 to 4 times a year, and for not as long. Mercury's retrograde has to do with communication and understanding, okay? Mercury is usually a really helpful planet that wants to understand everything from all different points of view, very neutral way of looking at things, and wants to share what it has understood. But when the retrograde comes, we may feel like we're stuck, blocked, like we can't understand some other points of view, or we are unwilling to look at someone else's point of view. We also may experience difficulties with technological things. Chief on the list seem to be computers and cars. So, take more time. Absolutely don't run out of gas. And do the things that you need to do, just as you would if you knew you had to go and drive in the fog, and the extra steps and the greater amount of time you would leave for yourself to reach your destination. Do the same with all of the tasks that are ruled by planets that are currently in retrograde. Venus has been retrograde for a while, and she will be until April 15th. And she is the planet of happiness and peace and mutual respect. And it may be that you haven't felt mutually respectful, or you've been confused about a relationship that felt mutually respectful before. Venus is also the planet that lets us know what things are worth, like when not to expend too much energy because it's simply not going to be worth it, or when not to be really close with other people who are spending way too much time and energy on things that aren't worth it. Because during retrograde, when you're confused, you're going to be more likely to be influenced by them, okay? Now, before a planet goes retrograde, and after the planet goes retrograde, it doesn't just snap into the other mode. In between the normal forward movement that we observe and retrograde is a time when it looks like the planet is standing still, which of course it isn't doing. But it looks like that from our vantage point, and we call that stationing direct, okay? So when Venus goes direct in a week from now, depending on when you're looking at this, it's April 15th, she's going to station direct for several days. And that means that we may still be experiencing some of the confusion, some of the questions about, is this a respectful thing or not? Is this a mutual relationship between adults? Venus doesn't rule relationships with children. They're not really that mutual, are they? So you may have confusion that extends past April 15th. And then, by, say, the 22nd, 23rd of April, you will find that you can go the regular speed limit with regard to Venus then. But of course, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, and Rahu and Ketu will still be retrograde. So I hope this has been useful to you. I hope that this time of the gift of retrograde brings you a lot of understanding and clarity, even if you have to walk through a lot of fog to get there. If you'd like to have a reading with me, you can contact me at rbanker09@gmail.com. You can also read my blogs and posts at Rayanne Banker Vedic Astrologer. And again, that's a public page, so if you're seeing this on Facebook, you can still recommend it to your friends who don't use Facebook. Thanks so much for your interest in Vedic astrology. Namaste.